Welcome back to the Line Table, complete with an all-journalist for our special year in review countdown. Coming in at number 3 on our list of the top stories of 2019 is the Energy Transition Act. The landmark legislation is designed to move the state to a renewable energy sources and includes the eventual closing of the coal-fired San Juan generating station in the Four Corners. Under the plan, utilities have until 2045 to be completely carbon-free. Rural co-ops have until 2050. Gwyneth, admirable goal, but not without its challenges, certainly. What do you see here?
No, it's not without its challenges at all. Everybody likes, wind and solar and everything, but the problem, of course, with developing a lot more wind power is where you're going to put these transmission lines. They take forever to build. There's massive environmental clearance.
Have we moved forward on that this year?
Not that I know of,
Yeah.
but I haven't been following in that closely. It's just that nobody wants a transmission line in their backyard, but then they all want wind power. No, very few people want to see wind turbines. We have to get over some of the NIMBY issues that this is going to present.
Andy, the ETA was a top priority, no doubt about that, for the governor and a lot of the Democratic leadership, no doubt on that either. Created a power struggle, though, with the Public Regulation Commission. I find this part of it very interesting. How do you see that little scrum playing out here?
Well, the PRC is always sort of its own little beast, and Steve can attest to this. He's covered it a lot for a very long time, and Gwyneth too. But yeah, I think that I think it's always going to be a power struggle between the PRC and pretty much anybody outside of the PRC. They don't really like it when somebody comes in and says, I know you're supposed to regulate this, but this is how you should regulate it. So.
Steve, we'll go right to you on that. How do you see that playing out? It's very interesting.
It's, like Andy alluded to, it's got a weird little turf war. Of course, one way it may play out, there's going to be a constitutional amendment on next year's ballot to make the PRC an appointed body. So
let's play a little assumption game. Assume that passes. How does that change things in that relationship with the ETA and the PRC and the governor? Got to throw the governor in there too.
Well, obviously, I think the governor will have a lot more control.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how it would work if there's 5 members the governor appoints, or
I'm not sure myself.
Or the legislature appoints some. I'm not sure the details.
She appoints across the board, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, I've seen bills like that before.
Yeah.
This is the first time that's ever going to go to the voters, though. So, and I predict, just because of the history of the PRC, rightly or wrongly, people say, yeah, we need a big change here. So,
Jessica, how do you see that? If potentially the PRC does in fact have those changes the voters are going to be touching on, how does that change the dynamics of the ETA?
Well, so if we're talking about something that's meant to protect the end user, right, in the long run, I think for me it's about asking the hard question of whose responsibility is it going to be now if it's an appointed body? Are they answering to the public? Are they answering to the person who appointed to them?
Right.
Overall, I think not everyday Joe is familiar with the way it works. So there's a lot of lack of education in the voter side of what exactly are we talking about as well. So that's maybe a key.
I'm laughing in my head because no one really knows how the PRC works. So it's just kind of interesting no matter what your level of expertise. But you make a good point there. Gwyneth, the idea that this constitutional ballot, I want you to touch on this too, and just kind of forecasting out ahead there, assuming success and the PRC is in fact going to be reformatted somehow. And the ETA felt like it was sort of forced on the PRC, this current kind of makeup. I'm wondering what the attitude might be with an appointed body. Are they coming in with marching orders that says, you must support this? You know what I mean? That kind of a thing?
Yeah, I mean, and I've covered a lot of the struggles that the PRC has had for a long time. There's always this tension between an appointed body or an elected body. An elected body, we say, is more responsive to the people, but very few people care at all about the PRC, and they tend to elect people whose name is vaguely familiar.
Right.
We did increase the requirements of the qualifications 5-6 years ago, something like that. But they have historically been extremely low for a body that regulates very complicated issues. My suspicion is that an appointed board the appointments would draw more attention, and that the candidates would be more highly qualified because more people would pay attention across the state. And I think that they might be more accountable, and I think with a greater with a greater experience in these issues that I hope that they would have, that they would not come in with specific marching orders. That's my hope.
Yeah. You know, Steve, we talked at this table about the idea of what constitutes, Gwyneth mentioned experience and how one gets chosen for these things, you know what I mean? And you can see a scenario with the governor, this woman has this set of skills, this guy's got this set of skills, this woman has, you know what I mean? You kind of go down the line. But how do we really know what makes up a good PRC person? I've always wondered that, actually.
Yeah.
What's that perfect background?
I'm still wondering. I don't. You know, Susana Martinez's greatest appointment during her entire 8 years as governor, in my view, she appointed the replacement for Jerome Block Jr., who, of course, committed felonies.
Yeah.
And she appointed a guy, a registered independent named Doug Howe. He's very, very well versed in environmental law. He wasn't political. He was thinking of running. In fact, he announced he was going to run for PRC the next year. Then he decided against it. But he was very well. He was Susana's greatest appointment. And so governors, and it wasn't political. She had a lot of Republicans tugging on her, saying, "Hey, pick me." But. So
that's a good example, though, of how tricky this could be. Interesting.
Yeah.
Jessica, I want to finish with this. One of the things I wanted to kind of set up when I just asked that question of Steve is, with this new PRC makeup, the idea that industry was a little too close to the decision-making on the ETA.
Yes.
And how that attitude for these new members is going to be on that issue alone. You know what I mean? That's hard to predict. I'm not asking for a prediction, but it's a real thing that's sort of hanging out there.
I think that we can all be very uncomfortable with how it feels to have industry too close to any decision-making body, and especially when you're talking about a piece of legislation that's going to help define what our state looks like for a long time to come. There, I would imagine, exists a lot of uncomfortable feelings around the thought that if this piece of legislation was put together with the hand of industry, what is to stop them from appointing a body that also is reflective of the industry and the industry needs rather than the everyday need of New Mexicans?
That's very well said. It's interesting because we're right to be worried on these things. Andy, please do pick up on that if you would. This idea of making up this body. We're a long way down the road. Don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying this is something we got to figure out before this vote happens.
I'd be really concerned for people that live like in Jessica's neighborhood, not neighborhood, but area of the state, Carlsbad, the rural areas where when you're talking about appointments, generally how these appointments work in other cases is that the governor or whoever's in charge of it kind of gets, they're not going to know everyone around the state, so you kind of get the word from that district. Well, this is a good person here, this is a good person here. And is that really a good person for the district? That I don't know. It does become very political.
On the other side, Gwyneth, the renewable requirements, there are a lot of things in here that folks fought a long time to get, and they are not interested in seeing this thing mucked with. You see what I mean? So there's a lot of things coming into this situation with the ETA that are, I mean, it's law, it's what it is, and people want to have it. So
yeah, I think I just want to push back on a little bit on the idea that anything that is too close to industry is necessarily bad. I mean, a lot of people who work in the renewable industries, in any kind of energy generation, a lot of these people are the most talented we have, right? So there is a huge amount of expertise and research coming out of these places. I think our job in doing oversight is to make sure that nothing gets skewed by environmentalists or oil and gas or whoever or any one side. So as long as we are paying attention to where they're going and making sure that it's not unduly skewed, I don't think that anyone should not get a seat at the table or be a part of the conversation.
it's out there. We'll see what happens.
You know, one thing that about the PRC, it's gone through a big change. A few years ago, the big rap on the PRC was that they're too close to PNM.
Right.
Now, it's gone to the other side, and now they want more scrutiny of PNM, and but it seems kind of weird that it happened when PNM's now calling for completely renewable energy in the near future.
Yes, long from over this conversation. That brings us to our number 2 story of 2019: education reform. Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham launched her education moonshot during her first State of the State address. Included in the reform packages were teacher raises, more money for programs for at-risk students, as well as the end of the old teacher evaluation system. And Gwyneth, of course, this reform is being pushed in large part because the Yazzie Martinez case, as we know, which found the state is in violation of constitutional rights for students. There have been challenges to this already. Where does this sit now? Where do you see this heading into 2020?
I hate to be in the prognostication business, especially when it comes to who's going to comply with their legal obligations. But, you know, I'm very interested to see what happens. We have for a long time had this debate over should we just throw more money at it, is that the solution, or do we need more accountability, like the testing and all these things? One thing that we haven't really tried is throwing a whole bunch more money at it. So
That's a good point.
I'm really
Yeah.
interested to see how it works and what happens. It's a great luxury that we do have the money to spend, and I want to see what happens.
How's the management of that money been so far? We've had a couple of bumps early on.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I know, I have not followed that.
Still to be played out, though, that's
Yeah.
for sure. Yazzie, the plaintiffs, by the way, in the case, have come out recently with some pretty harsh words about the education, haven't they? You've been reporting on that. What's going on there?
Yeah, I haven't personally been reporting on it, but I was just thinking, I think it was a year ago, we were sitting having the same conversation. How would Governor Lujan Grisham deal with this? She said last year, almost exactly a year ago, she said, I would not appeal this decision. It'll be really interesting to see going forward when she's tried to fix this and the plaintiffs are saying, no, you still haven't. We're still in the same boat. Does she keep not appealing it? You know, how does this going forward? I don't know.
It's an interesting point there.
Yeah.
You know, interesting, Jessica, when you think about this, there's a lot of impatience implied with the moonshot. Things want to happen quick. It's not just the money, but there's a speed issue.
Right.
How's that working out so far?
So I think some of the criticism at the beginning was that it's going too fast. We are throwing money at it, and if you're like me, I say throw all the money at it. But the money that we did have, we threw it out there, and there wasn't really a lot of guidance for how it should be used. We understood that there's some general guidelines for here's what we're trying to reach. And the calmer voices are saying we need a better outline of what this looks like long term. We can't invest in it now and expect to see results next year or the year after that. It's a very long-term investment. And when it comes to the expectations, right, some of those harsher voices were asking, can we do more than just raise a teacher salary? Yes, it's a correlation between here's a strong teacher that results in a very sturdy student who succeeds in the long term, but are we truly addressing the at-risk student, which this lawsuit was meant to, or the opinion on the lawsuit was meant to address?
Yeah, we're not clear on that either, are we? We have some ways to go on that. You know, Steve, interestingly, there's been a morale problem when you think about the education business statewide. And the idea, teachers' raises, but the teacher evaluation thing was a big deal for teachers. They're a big, hard-fought thing. How did you see that playing out as it went all through 2019? Is that settled? Is that put to bed? Is that?
I don't think it'll ever be settled completely. It's probably going in a good direction, but yeah, there's still some bumps in the road to come, I'm sure.
Is there any drama from the Trujillo firing that still need to be smoothed out? Are we in the clear on that with the new education secretary?
Yeah, I haven't heard too much fallout recently about that. I was actually, I like the fact that the governor said, yeah, she's an okay lady and everything, but we're not satisfied with the progress. Instead of saying, no, she's leaving to spend more time with her family or something, So I was glad they didn't gloss that over, even though it probably got her some criticism.
You know, Gwyneth, the idea, I want to throw this out there too for everybody, not just you, but the free college tuition moonshot. Maybe that's the second stage of the moonshot, but it's a moonshot nonetheless. I saw this as one of two ways. There was a side that was like, oh my gosh, finally. This is the absolute way New Mexico is going to get ahead. But then the other side came in a few days, weeks later. Folks are already paying for their education, folks in the middle of paying for their education, suddenly going, okay, hang on here. Who's getting this free ride? And this person is, and this person is. Where are we on the free college thing? What's going to happen there?
Well, we're all over the map on the free college thing, like you just said. You know, I teach here at UNM, and I see a lot of students in my classes who are the first in their families to go to school. I see a lot of students who are desperately struggling to stay in school because of the money, even though, you know, the older you get, it doesn't seem like very much money, but it is a huge problem.
That's right.
I think we have a lot of talented students here who simply can't go to college because of the money, despite the lottery scholarship. So do I know how that would work? No. Seems to work well in other countries.
Do you have a sense of it if it actually was implemented? What would be from your view as a college professor? Are you supportive of the idea, or are you?
Well, yeah. I mean, the other side of that is it's not just like, oh, UNM just opens its doors.
Right.
Anyone can walk right in. I think if you offer free college to everyone, you still have to maintain your standards, right, of admission and make sure that students are prepared. That's a place where we still struggle.
Right.
We are still doing massive amounts of remedial education for students who are coming into UNM. CNM is massively burdened by taking care of a lot of that remedial stuff in between high school and when students are ready for college. Those problems need to be solved probably before we can move ahead.
That's a good point there. Andy, it goes without saying our school budget, budgets for schools, half the state's budget. I mean, it's a huge amount of money. Are we going to have to sort of calculate how we look at money? Gwyneth opened us up by saying, the answer's been for a lot of folks, throw a bunch of money at it. The money has come, but now we have to kind of change our point of view about how big is big. Do you know what I mean? It's an interesting thing we're going through.
Yeah, I think money is definitely a conversation, but also keep in mind that to do this, it takes literally an act of the legislature, right? So she announced this, and I would say we should expect to see this on the call for the special session, or not special session, 30-day session. But yes, those conversations have to go along with it. How free is it? How much money are we talking? Does everyone get the same opportunities? Are there some people that need a little extra help than others?
That's right.
I don't know.
That's right. Jess, it's a pretty obvious question here. The oil boom money is coming. It's here.
Right.
It looks like it's going to last for a bit, but it may not last forever. You never know on these things.
So those voices shouting fiscal responsibility and pounding the table, that's exactly their point, which is although despite assurances that we might have a 10, 20-year boom or at least consistently produce revenue for the state, you just never know. A lot is dependent upon market and technology, really. So, how confident, I guess the question is, how confident is the state in the continued revenue? And are they willing to sustain whatever they're giving to education through the potential low points?
Right.
When you think about the last bust and how hard it was to go back into the revenue start slashing, I think that's, it gets pretty complicated pretty quickly. So it's integral, at least to me and to the people in Southeast New Mexico. If you're going to make the investment, then it's a promise. It's a long-term promise.
Good point there. No doubt education reform will be a top story again for 2020. And for sure, we'll be talking about it here at the Line Table again soon. When we come back, it's our top story of 2019.